Calcium is the most abundant mineral in your entire body, making up about 2% of your total body weight. And if you think it's just about building strong bones, you're missing the incredible story of how this single element controls everything from your heartbeat to your thoughts. Right now, as you're watching this video, calcium ions are flooding in and out of your cells, triggering muscle contractions, transmitting nerve signals, releasing hormones, and performing thousands of critical functions every single second. But here's the mind-blowing part. 99% of your body's calcium is locked away in your bones and teeth, serving as a massive storage bank that your body raids whenever blood calcium levels drop even slightly. Let's start with how calcium enters your body, because this process is more complex than you'd think. When you eat calcium-rich foods like dairy products, leafy greens, or fortified foods, the calcium exists as calcium salts that need to be absorbed through your intestinal walls. But here's the catch. Your intestines are incredibly selective and only absorb about 30% of the calcium you consume under normal conditions. The absorption happens primarily in your small intestine, specifically in the duodenum and upper jejunum, where specialized cells called enterocytes line the intestinal wall, waiting to transport calcium into your bloodstream. These enterocytes have calcium channels on their surface that open when activated by calcitriol, the active form of vitamin D we talked about earlier, which is why vitamin D and calcium work as an inseparable team. When calcium enters an enterocyte through these channels, it immediately binds to a protein called calbindin, which acts like a shuttle carrying calcium across the cell, because free calcium inside cells would trigger unwanted reactions and potentially kill the cell. Once calcium reaches the other side of the enterocyte, it's pumped out into the bloodstream by calcium ATPase pumps and sodium-calcium exchanges, energy-consuming processes that ensure calcium moves against its concentration gradient into your blood. Now, your blood calcium level is maintained within an incredibly tight range of 8.5 to 10.5 milligrams per deciliter. And your body defends this range so aggressively that it'll sacrifice bone health to maintain it, which tells you just how critical calcium is for immediate survival. Your parathyroid glands, 4 tiny glands embedded in your thyroid, constantly monitor blood calcium levels like vigilant sentries. And the moment calcium drops even slightly below the normal range, they release parathyroid hormone, or PTH, into your bloodstream. PTH is like an emergency response system with 3 main targets. First, it signals your kidneys to reduce calcium excretion in urine and activate more vitamin D. Second, it tells your intestines to absorb more calcium from food. And third, most dramatically, it commands your bones to release calcium into the bloodstream immediately. This bone breakdown is performed by specialized cells called osteoclasts, which are essentially bone-eating cells that secrete acids and enzymes to dissolve the mineral matrix of bone, liberating calcium and phosphate into your blood. On the flip side, when blood calcium levels rise too high, your thyroid gland releases calcitonin, a hormone that does the opposite by inhibiting osteoclasts and promoting calcium deposition into bones, though calcitonin's role is actually less important than PTH in humans. Now let's dive into how calcium builds bone, because bone isn't the static, dead material most people imagine. It's living tissue that's constantly being remodeled, broken down, and rebuilt throughout your entire life. Bone consists of 2 main components: an organic matrix made primarily of collagen fibers that provide flexibility and tensile strength, and an inorganic mineral phase made of hydroxyapatite crystals, which are basically calcium phosphate crystals that provide hardness and compressive strength. The cells responsible for building bone are called osteoblasts, and these remarkable cells secrete the collagen matrix and control the mineralization process. Osteoblasts produce an unmineralized matrix called osteoid, which is essentially a collagen scaffold, and then they carefully regulate the deposition of calcium and phosphate crystals onto the scaffold through a process called mineralization. The osteoblasts release small membrane-bound vesicles into the osteoid that are loaded with calcium and phosphate, and these vesicles act as nucleation sites where the first hydroxyapatite crystals form. Once crystallization begins, it spreads throughout the collagen matrix in a highly organized pattern, with calcium and phosphate ions from the bloodstream continuously adding to the growing crystals. The alignment of these crystals along collagen fibers is what gives bone its incredible strength, combining the flexibility of collagen with the hardness of minerals to create a composite material stronger than concrete yet light enough to move. As osteoblasts build bone around themselves, they eventually become trapped in the matrix they created and transform into osteocytes, which are mature bone cells that sit in tiny spaces called lacunae, connected to each other through microscopic channels called canaliculi. These osteocytes act as mechanosensors, detecting mechanical stress and strain on bones and signaling when and where bone remodeling needs to occur, which is why weight-bearing exercise strengthens bones while immobility weakens them. But calcium's roles extend far beyond bone structure into life-or-death cellular functions that happen every moment. In your muscles, calcium is the trigger for contraction. When a nerve signal reaches a muscle cell, it causes calcium to flood from storage sites in the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the cytoplasm, and this calcium binds to troponin proteins on muscle filaments, causing a shape change that allows myosin and actin filaments to slide past each other, generating the force of contraction. In your heart muscle, calcium influx doesn't just trigger contraction, but also regulates the rhythm and strength of each heartbeat, which is why abnormal calcium levels can cause dangerous cardiac arrhythmias. In your neurons, calcium rushing into nerve terminals triggers the release of neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that allow brain cells to communicate, meaning every thought you have, every memory you form, every sensation you feel involves precisely controlled calcium movements. Calcium also activates countless enzymes throughout your body, acts as a second messenger in hormone signaling pathways, enables blood clotting by activating clotting factors, and regulates cell division and death. Your body's calcium balance depends on three organs working in concert: your intestines absorbing it from food, your bones storing and releasing it as needed, and your kidneys either conserving it by reabsorbing it from urine or excreting excess amounts. Your kidneys filter about 10 grams of calcium from your blood every day, but 98% gets reabsorbed in the kidney tubules under the influence of PTH, demonstrating just how precious calcium is to your survival. When you don't consume enough calcium, your body doesn't just accept lower levels. It steals from your bones through increased osteoclast activity, gradually weakening your skeleton over months and years. This is why calcium deficiency in childhood causes rickets and stunted growth, while in adults it leads to osteopenia and eventually osteoporosis, where bones become so porous and fragile that simple falls cause fractures. The bottom line is this: calcium is far more than a bone-building mineral. It's a fundamental element controlling muscle contraction, nerve transmission, hormone secretion, blood clotting, and cellular communication, with your skeleton serving as both structural framework and calcium bank, constantly donating and accepting calcium based on your body's immediate needs, making calcium regulation one of the most sophisticated and critical homeostatic systems in human physiology.